Hello, I have with me Jacob Roper, and he is writing a paper. He's going to be interviewing me. I haven't heard any of the questions yet, so if he tries to trick me, I'll just try to trick him. So, go right ahead.
Okay, so after you came up with the concepts for your story, how did you go about outlining it or preparing to write it?
That's a good question. Well, when I finally did start to write it, which was some over a decade after I first came up with the original idea, and it sort of evolved and became much more complicated in that decade. What I did was, I'm a great believer in trying to prepare for everything, having a structure to hold everything, and I knew I would need an outline. I knew I would need the broad strokes and the medium strokes. So I used Microsoft Word, and I basically used the outlining function on that. So it was divided into chapters. First, I just wrote out the script, what's going to happen, and then I figured out how I would probably have to break it down into chapters. After that, I broke it down into sections. That's where you'll be reading along, and all of a sudden you'll see 3 dashes, a couple of space, and you're into a new shot, so to speak, or a new scene, and it changes there. So after you have the chapters, you have those sections. And so I would put in the sections, and those sections, instead of just being 3 dashes, would be 3 dashes and a brief summary of what was going to come next. This way, I can pull it up in Word, and I can see the chapters, and then I can see it further broken down in the sections. And that's about as far as you're going to break it down. So that's basically what I did, and it worked out pretty well. By the way, I set up some macros because I knew I would be wanting to go to next chapter, previous chapter, and the book has 2 parts too. And I knew I would want to go to next section, previous section. So I created macros and a little toolbar in Word to do that, so I wouldn't have to do search for 3 next things or paging forward, and I could just go instantly to it, and it worked out beautifully. I love it.
How much time do you think you spent developing the story before you wrote it?
Oh, that's a hard one. It's almost an impossible one because I was working. I was doing all manner of stuff, and the development of that and other stories came to me when it came to me, and I really just remember it, or in many cases I would create little notes for myself, which I always lost anyway, so it's best that I remembered it. But it's really hard to say. It was 11 years, no, 10 years. Just started, scratch that too. I started writing the story in earnest in 2004. So we have a period of 11 years in the first concept and that, and when I actually started writing it. And gosh, it's so impossible to say because whenever I would have a moment, I would think about it. Sometimes I would spend half an hour trying to work through something, or visiting the science forums to check on what's possible, what's ridiculous, what can I say and get away with, how could this be possible. I went through a lot of that, so oh gosh, maybe 3 man years and all of that. If that makes any sense. That's the closest I can count.
So at what point did you decide that the story was ready to be written?
Another hard question. if I really thought in that, that wasn't the question. The question to me was almost start writing it before you keep adding more and more and more. It was more a question of when can I devote time to it and not be distracted by other things, like starting a little company, which I started in 2002 when I retired, and I was totally dedicated to that and animated book trailers and trying to get that off the ground before I started on the story. Even after I started on the story, there would be long breaks, and I would go a year without working on it. So before you get to that question. You don't know how long it took to write it, but I can probably guess. But when was it ready? It was actually the broad strokes were all in place when I started it. I knew exactly where the story was going, how I was going to get there. So at that point, I considered myself ready to begin writing it. Actually, I could have started writing it in 2002 had I not been distracted by all the other endeavors.
So, how much time, relatively, do you think you spent writing the story versus editing?
Let's see if I can answer that question at all. I'll go out on a limb and say that I probably wrote and rewrote and changed in the beginning. And got the first draft down. Probably took me close to 2 man-years, though it was spread out over a much longer time, almost 10 years. I would work on it for a couple of months, and then I'd get distracted for a few months. And I'd get back to it. You really lose a lot of time when you get distracted, because once you come back to it, you have to go, where was I? And then you have to gear up and get there again. As far as editing it, it was probably 50% writing it, 50% editing it. As I said, it was 3 man-years writing it. It was 3 man-years editing it. It won't take that long next time. I know a lot of shortcuts now.
So, when did you decide that the story, writing, editing, everything was finished?
Haven't reached that point yet. It's when you're writing a book, you can literally go on polishing it and tweaking it forever. Finally, family and friends were just all over me to stop changing things. Because my poor wife, who was one of the proofreaders, would proofread something, and I'd rewrite it, change it, give it back to her. This sounds awfully familiar. And that was a bad thing. Having that happen, I'm going to try very hard to avoid that. I'm going to lock down a chapter, edit it, tweak it all I want, and then pass it on to proofreaders and to editors. But probably editors first and then proofreaders. That would be the proper order.
What was the publishing process like?
Publishing process was pretty straightforward and easy. There's a lot of involved, but it's all spelled out for you. There are forums out there to get help. It was pretty easy, really. I've only published the ebook on Amazon. I'm getting ready to do that with Barnes & Noble for the Nook. And I hear that they're a lot easier than Amazon's process of getting into that point. By far, the most difficult process to get right and to get through was through Amazon's direct publishing for the paperback version, the hard copy. Yeah. The only thing that I kind of stumbled over at first was trying to place the images that I have in the book exactly where I wanted them. That's a little bit. Other than that, the process is pretty straightforward. There's a lot out there on it. A lot of people to help you.
What is it like now to have your book out on market?
Nice. Really nice. I loved the first time I saw the paperback copy arrive. It was a nice day. It was also nice to see the electronic version out there very much so. It's an ongoing process. The last time I released a new version of the Spiral Slayers Encounters, Book 1, not only the last time, the time for that, I always said, this is a final release. But it wasn't, and but this upcoming one will be, maybe. That answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what do you think was the best or the most enjoyable part of the whole process?
It's all enjoyable, really. Writing it was very enjoyable after it was out there on the marketplace. Probably hitting that last OK button that says go with it, publish it, put it on the site. That was probably the most enjoyable with it. Being done with it. Relatively. You can never be done with it.
Right, well, that's all the questions I have.
All right.